So the lucky first step is Andrea. I'm not sure he's here.
I'm here.
Cool.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Okay, yeah, so hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Frittoli. I work for IBM and I'm one of the co-founder and maintainers of CDEvents. So CDEvent is a common specification for continuous delivery events. So we focus on interoperability. So we want to bring disruption in the CD ecosystem by driving interoperability in a different way for CD tools to interact with each other. We are one of the newest projects in the CDF, but we have a growing community. So we have contributors from 20 different companies now. We have 142 Twitter followers and 85 GitHub stars. So what we've done recently, we worked on new releases. So we have releases 0.2 and 0.3 out, where we introduce new features like test and incident events, initial support for supply chain security events, and we also published our Java SDK to Maven. And the other area where we focused really hard is integration in tools. So tools adopting CDEvents. So CDEvents wants to be a standard for interoperability, and so we have CDEvent supports in Jenkins now and TestCube. We are working on implementation on Spinnaker and Tekton. And we have RFC approved for Harbor and RFC work in progress for Argo CD. And then we are continue to work with other tools. And also we are striking some collaboration with other communities like the Value Stream Management Interoperability Group, the App Delivery Tag on the CNCF side, the OpenSSF. We joined their tool belt initiative to see if there is space for CDEvents and interoperability in there, as well as the SIG interop in the CDF as part of the reference architecture initiative. Companies that are interested in CDEvents, well, we have, as I said, 20 contributors. Some of the most interested ones, Fidelity, they adopted CDEvents, so they're adopting it for Jenkins today. Then we have SAS, Apple, Ericsson, IBM, and many more. And we are working on our 0.4 release. So we are working on things like connecting events better, support for visualizations of events. And we want to have a supply chain security features. So we are working on that, as well as more tools and adoptions.
Very cool.
And yeah, any questions? I don't know if there is time for questions, sorry.
There is time for questions. Well, if you think of one, you know where to find Andrea.
Thank you, Andrea, for that. I think this is, like he said, with the cross collaboration between different groups, different companies, it's definitely an exciting project. And speaking of one of the companies, boom, there's Jenkins.
I mean, yeah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alyssa Tong. I work for CloudBees, but my time is fully dedicated to the Jenkins open source. I am the Jenkins events officer. I lead the advocacy and outreach SIG. So if you're ever interested in joining us, we do meet every other Thursday. So just check out the Jenkins calendar. But so Jenkins is the largest and leading open source automation server. We currently have 110,000 LinkedIn followers, 65,000 Twitter followers, 600 contributors from around the world. We also have 250,000 installs and 1,800 plugins available. There's a lot of work that's being cooking up within the project, but some of the highlights include activities that efforts to and rejuvenate the mature Jenkins code base. And this is critical for the growth and evolution of the Jenkins project and the Jenkins product itself. Along the same line, the UI UX SIG has been continuing their efforts to modernize Jenkins UI UX with new themes, new icons, menus, forms, and updated buttons. We are now in our 7th year as a mentoring organization for Google Summer of Code. Our mentors are spending a lot of hours with our mentees, and to date, we have successfully mentored 35 GSOC mentees. And lastly, the Jenkins monthly newsletter is a great place to read up on current activities and its progress within the project. So some of the stuff that I've highlighted here, it's just there isn't enough space for me to highlight everything. But if you want to see what's going on within the Jenkins project, please do check out our monthly newsletter. And that can be found in the jenkins.io website under blog. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Alyssa. I saw your tweets for the GSOC. There are 4 students right now, right?
Correct. And
Cool.
thank you for your help with the pretty images.
Of course, if anyone needs images, I'm here to help. Do we have any questions for Jenkins? All right. So Tom can't be here. He had a conflicting meeting, but he updated slides. They're relaunching the TOC. They had a long break. And so, yeah, we shared the slides with you and I put it here, but they're on Slack if you have any questions. Tracy or Steve? I think Tracy had a webinar today, so she might not be here. So Ortelius tweets a lot. And they always update everyone on what they're doing, and there's a lot. The latest thing is that they have Emporus, their new sub-project, and again, if you know where to find Tracy, on the CDF Slack. Oh.
I feel like my slide is too busy now. I have regrets, but we'll see what we can do. Right, so Tekton is, of course, a job orchestration / CI/CD system that's native to Kubernetes. And I've had the pleasure over the last year when I'm working with Tekton talking to lots and lots of mostly large companies that are implementing sort of internal build and continuous delivery systems using Kubernetes and Tekton. And so that's given us some good fodder to kind of steer some of the functionality towards use cases that they're identifying. It's been good to see. So we'll touch on that when we get to the backlog part. We made a lot of hay at the recent CDCon around some important deliveries for Tekton. And a lot of what we invested into over the last, I think, even 8 months or so or longer, has to do with supply chain security. So that was the big area of focus for our announcement. We have a sub-project called Tekton Chains that's all about producing attestations for every build step, and some integrations around Tekton Chains that I think are getting a lot of attention, because supply chain security, of course, is very high profile in the market. And so that's been going really well. We have more stuff in the works, but I think this was our first sort of big announcement around that. You'll see in the in progress area, Salsa, which is specification for various aspects of supply chain security, including attestations, not just, but maybe a couple of months ago, announced version 1, and they have sort of finalized their provenance format, sort of what they require in a provenance attestation. And so Tekton is moving towards rounding out our sort of built-in default provenance statements to align with that. Also in progress, you'll see just things that we're looking at that result from these conversations that we've been having. The first one there is data locality. One of the things that continues to be challenging for people who are implementing and running Tekton is just making sure that the data that particular job steps need, by data, I mean artifacts, maybe even just a cloned source code, are available in a mounted volume or some kind of workspace where the task is executing. And Tekton has a particular operating model where it sort of distributes things and tasks which can run anywhere. And so some extra configuration is required to make sure that one task can hand over data to another task. And that configuration is fine, but for really simple use cases, people complain because it's like, why should I have to do all this extra configuration if I want to do something that's kind of fundamental to a CI system, like check out source code and build it and test it and push it somewhere? I should just get all of that for free. And we agree. So we're focusing on various aspects of how data is made available to workloads. What else is in that list? Scheduling. Along a very similar vein, just taking everything that's in a pipeline and saying, this is all going to run in the same environment with a common set of shared resources instead of just being distributed around the cluster. So that so you can do common things without having to configure persistent data between tasks. I talked about the Salsa specification. Some release management stuff, just feature flagging down to the feature level to allow people to mix and match the features they want to enable for a cluster and try new things with less risk. And let's talk about some of the things in the backlog. Yeah, so we're looking at stuff that's sort of practical controls and levers that people who are running Tekton in production continuous delivery systems want. And one of the things seems pretty fundamental, but we don't support it yet, which is just scheduling. This is something that people are very accustomed to if they use, for example, a Jenkins automation server or other kinds of automations. Like, how come I can't just say this job runs at this particular calendar date? That's just not something that Tekton has ever supported. So we need to. Concurrency. There's a couple of things we're doing around concurrency, like what happens if I have a couple of different instances of the same pipeline that are started up concurrently because there's been an error and a restart or something. Can we have some more control over queuing and some more control over which to run and which to automatically cancel? Some policies around managing concurrency, just so that things scale a little bit better. And then finally, I think one of the areas we hear a lot about is just the pipeline and task YAML itself, the sort of the configuration interface for defining Tekton pipelines. It is because Tekton is really just a set of Kubernetes custom resource definitions, it's very Kubernetes-ish. And I think for a lot of people who are using Tekton internally, that's a virtue because they don't have to learn, a new set of semantics to do stuff. But for a broader set of people, that becomes, they see things like API and kind and all these sort of Kubernetes-isms, and they're wondering, what is this stuff and why do I have to worry about it? So always thinking of ways to try to make our YAML more concise and a little bit more human readable with less redundancies in it. And so that's a big area of focus for the community right now too. That's Tekton. Thanks, everybody.
That's great. We have a few blog posts, for example, about what happened at CDCon, and I think one with Salsa and Tekton chains that I posted recently as well. So, does anyone have questions? Is someone talking? Okay. Steven? I don't know that Steve or Steve are here today. Lori, do you know?
It doesn't look like it. Doesn't look like either Steve.
All right. Jason, could you make it? I'll leave this slide here as well. Spinnaker, the DC.
Hello. Huh? You were saying?
Sorry, I thought I was on mute.
Oh, okay, no worries. All right. Hi, my name is Daddy Spinnaker, and I am an engineering manager at Apple, and I'm also on the Spinnaker Technical Oversight Committee. With Spinnaker, you can create, deploy immutable images for faster rollouts, easier rollouts, and the elimination of configuration drift. And we're an open source project with a multi-cloud continuous delivery platform that combines pipeline management and built-in deployment strategies such as blue, green, and canary deployments. Our focus is bringing the code base up to date, clearing out technical debt so we can start building back towards features again. We are our last release, we upgraded the Spring Boot 2.4 and Gradle 7.6.1. We're actually going to continue that process we'll be upgrading to 2.5 on the next release and so on and so forth, kind of creeping our way up as we clear some technical debt. We've also added support for Azure, making image baking improvements and improving for AWS EC2 instances, the changes that were made to the API specifically, and we've expanded support for adding request headers to response headers. That's
Thank you. Questions? No. Shipwright.
Yep. Hi. Okay, so my name is Enrique Encalada. I work for IBM. One of the things I do at IBM is I have been leading teams for the last year. So one of the main things we do is we go back to open source projects and we see what could be a good fit for IBM. So we take that to IBM and at the same time we contribute back to the open source projects. Shipwright is one of the best examples in the last years that we have been doing as a team inside IBM. Yeah, so what is Shipwright? So basically what I put in the slide, so it's a framework for building container images in cluster. When you take a look at the pipeline or a CD, we are really focused on the building block around building container images. So we don't try to be any sort of Swiss Army knife. We like to call us kind of the hammer when building container images. So that's kind of the selling sentence we use. We joined the foundation or the CD Foundation 2 years ago, back in 2021. And so far the project was incepted 3 years ago. So today, just to give you some numbers, we have around so far 900 PRs. We have also the enhancements proposals, which is mainly technical features that someone in the community or outside of the community would like Shipwright to have. So I think at the moment we just have 2 that are not implemented, 40 plus. And for 3 years, I think we have more than 500 GitHub stars, which is I think a good number. In terms of adoptions in Shipwright, we are mainly adopted by IBM, but also by Red Hat. So a lot of the community is composed mainly by folks from IBM and Red Hat. We have a successful story so far. So in IBM, we have a product or a cloud service called IBM Cloud Code Engine. And there we use, or the build service behind Code Engine is actually Shipwright. So we have been successfully building thousands of images so far inside a vendor. And I think, I don't want to speculate too much, but I think also Red Hat through OpenShift is planning to do something with Shipwright. Yeah, so let me just give you some of the updates for the latest and greatest from Shipwright. We are also focused a lot on the topic of supply chain. So one of the things we would like to do is to allow our users to specify through our API if they would like some of the security features. So for example, do you want to generate an SBOM when you generate a container image? Do you want us to run a vulnerability scanning before we push your image to the container registry so that you can tell us if you want to push an image with a CVE, for example? Do you want us to generate images that are signed so that someone can prove that the identity of the actor that generate that image can be proven? So these are some of the examples that we're looking at when we speak about supply chain. The second thing is we are moving towards the beta API. So we are today still in alpha, but as I say, we have a proven record that our alpha is still is in a good state. And also in order for us to signalize maturity of the project, that's why we want to move to beta as soon as possible. The other things are integration. So we are working on mainly integration with Tekton pipelines. A lot of the questions we had in the past when we do talks about Shipwright is, why should I use Shipwright if I have Tekton? The usual answer was, if you already know Tekton, you probably don't need Shipwright. if you already know Tekton, if you don't know Tekton, Shipwright is kind of an easy way to get into building container images in cluster without the need of knowing all of the semantics from Tekton. But today, where we want to be is we want to give users the best of both. So we want Shipwright to be easily integrated with Tekton pipelines. We also have a sub-project called Triggers, which is actually the one that will allow us to have that integration. So we are also looking on making Triggers reach its first official release. These are probably the 4 key points I wanted to mention for today. What else? So what we're looking for, we are looking for more participation, either in things like Hacktoberfest, which we did this year, or just getting more involved into the foundation. For example, being part of this committee, I think is a good example. What we need is definitely more adoption. And also we're looking for more collaboration with other projects inside or outside the foundation. Yeah, so that's Shipwright.
That's great, Enrique. I liked everything you said. I would love to learn more about triggers, and when the release or the first release comes out, we can also do a blog post or something about it. Tell everyone.
Yeah, definitely. I will make a note on this one. Thank you.
Cool.